I'm Scotty Fitchett, and on behalf of Ernie, Patty, Patrick, Nick, and Eden, welcome to this memorial and celebration of life for Liz Murphy. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we'd ask that you please wear a mask while indoors. Or if you'd like, I'd probably spare face shield if you want one of these. I can tell by some of the looks I got when I just mentioned COVID and masks that most of you are like me and are kind of done hearing about it and over it, and the last thing you want to do is listen to this guy talk about it. But as you all know, dear Liz was a victim of the novel coronavirus. One of the things that I found most striking this week talking to her family is how aware Liz was of other people. Stories about how when she was at Creation's Closet, she would hear a family talking about how they didn't have money for a coat, and miraculously that coat would become free. To specifically shopping for a little boy, knowing that his family was going to come in that fall and need boots, and she wanted to have them there for him. To leaving the number to rehab centers and convenience store bathrooms, from knowing Toys for Tots needed more than just Barbies, from being an incredible mom who provided amazing adventures, to bringing anyone she met who needed help home with her. She paid attention to people. She noticed what they needed, and she loved them. Because of who she was and how she died, our response to COVID deserves and maybe even demands some reflection. I'm not a pundit, nor do I have a political persuasion I'm trying to push. But here are some of the questions I've been asking myself this week and for the last 2 years. Am I more worried about being right about COVID or doing what's right? How can I better show love to people who I don't know and I'm only going to have a passing interaction with? At what point should I risk my own health and safety to meet people where they're at? Are my fears about what is happening in our country or what will happen in the future keeping me from living in relationship with the people in my community? Am I really standing up for what is right and true and good, or am I just looking for an excuse to be self-righteous and stand on my soapbox? What is the balance between liberty and love, not only in myself, but in our community and our country? Can I reject mask mandates and vaccine passports, yet still wear a mask and get vaccinated? Would I act differently around people if I knew their whole story? It's not my place to make comments or suggestions or tell you what to do. But those are questions that deserve to be asked today. Our brains are not programmed to comprehend global pandemics, but rather they're programmed to live in neighborhoods. So let us seek to love our neighbors as ourselves. This week I've been reflecting a lot about Eden, not only Liz's daughter, but the Garden of Eden, the story of where it all began. The story of where God created Adam and Eve, where God created humans, where they lived in perfect relationship with each other, with God, and the natural world. This beautiful picture of how things were supposed to be on a day where it's not supposed to be like this. As I've reflected about Adam and Eve, I've thought about the fact that Adam and Eve chose to reject God and were banished from the Garden of Eden, creating chaos in the world as humans were separated from each other and from God. But that's not the end of the story, because the Garden of Eden is only the beginning of the story when God seeks to redeem humans back to himself, when God works throughout history and throughout time to bring about Jesus to restore humans to himself, to each other, and the natural world. Eden moves towards the redemption that comes through Jesus. But there's a big question about God in the story of Eden that didn't get asked in this building when I was going to church here as a kid. Did God set up Adam and Eve so he could be the hero? Does everything truly happen for a reason? Is that what God intended, was for people to be rejected and banished? Did God cause all the pain and suffering in Liz's life and ours? Did God cause Liz to die? Of course not. We live in a world broken by sin. We don't live in the garden. We are separated from God both individually and collectively, humanity and the natural world. Why? Because God allowed Adam and Eve the choice to trust him or follow their own way. Because there can be no love without choice. And the result of Adam and Eve's choice, as well as my choices and yours, is that we live in separation from God. Liz experienced that separation acutely in her life. The burden of the sin of others, the burden of her own sins, the burden of a broken world where disease and death dominate. But in Liz's life, as in the culmination of the story of creation, God redeems. Through Jesus, brokenness is made whole, love is made complete, life is given and given abundantly. Liz was taken too early, but she lived a happy, healthy, holistic life, a flourishing and abundant life full of meaning through the way of Jesus. She lived in grace and gave grace to those around her. Hers was a life of meaning beyond chance, circumstance, or situation. Liz's life was redeemed by God, and we can be too. Everything does not happen for a reason. Everything does not happen for a reason, but everything does happen for redemption. God can weave a story of happiness, healthiness, and wholeness, a flourishing, abundant, meaningful life for each of us, even through this pain and loss. No, God did not design for Liz to die, but he did allow it. He did not design for her to have to endure all the hardships she did, but he did allow it. But it's through the grace of God that Liz allowed herself to be made new, to live abundantly in the midst of suffering. And we can too. May we all allow God's grace to wash over us, as Liz did. We're now going to watch a slideshow put together about Liz's life.
Packed up the photo album
I think that slideshow is a wonderful representation of what it means to be here today. Both a collective mourning and also a celebration. This week about who Liz was, there's words that just keep popping up. Kind, generous, positive, joyful, hardworking, reliable, gracious, complicated, caring, compassionate, self-sacrificing, tough, fearless, adventurous, authentic, genuine, glowing, I like that one, protective, inclusive, accepting, original, creative, unique, funny, weird, in a good way. That's a direct quote from someone else. And loving. I've tried to piece together what Liz's life should do in us and through us. And as I've talked to people, I've made some resolutions just for myself to allow Liz to live in me and through me. And these are mine. Number one is be resilient. That's a word, as Patty and I talked the other day, that just kept coming up. This is a young lady who, at the age of 3, had giardia in an Eskimo village. How many of us can say that? She lived through the trials of life in small Alaskan towns and villages. She was the victim of assault in her young adulthood. Financial difficulties kept her from her dream of art school. She dealt with addiction and disorder. As you look at her life, it reads like the book of Job. What more could happen to this young lady? Once things start going well, something happens. But that's what makes it so amazing. That's what makes Liz so amazing, is the fact that in spite of the circumstances, the situations she found herself in, she chose grace and to be gracious. As I've been thinking about her resiliency, there's a passage from the book of Lamentations that just keeps coming up. I am the man, in Liz's case, the woman. I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of God's wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his face against me again and again all day long. He has made my skin and my flesh grow old and has broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness like those long dead. I'm not sure that Liz ever read that passage, but I know that she felt it. But it doesn't end there. And this is the part that Liz lives so well. I remember my affliction and my wanderings, the bitterness and the gall. I remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet here it is. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore have hope. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for the young man to bear the yoke while he is young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him offer his cheek to one who would strike him, and let him be filled with disgrace. For men are not cast off by the Lord forever. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. For he does not willingly bring affliction or grief to the children of men. Be resilient. The next thing that has been very clear to me about Liz, that I would like more of in my life and to emulate, is to speak the truth in love. I'm really good at speaking. I'm sort of good at loving. I rarely combine them. Speak the truth in love. There's a quote that I heard this week that I have to share with you. Liz was blunt and clear but sweet and kind at the same time. Liz was blunt and clear, but sweet and kind at the same time. At this time in our lives, in our culture, may we all pray that we could be blunt and clear, but sweet and kind at the same time. That we might have the compassion to speak truth into people's lives from a place of humility and love rather than judgment. The next thing that I found striking is her industriousness. There's a concept in psychology called learned industriousness. It's the counter to learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a fascinating thing that can happen to people and animals too, where if they're put in a situation where they have no control of getting out of that bad situation, the next time they're in a situation that they could get out of, they don't. Too many people are trapped in learned helplessness. Whether it's poverty or relationships or abuse, many of them have the power to get out, but cannot because of a psychological condition called learned helplessness. That was not Liz. Because Liz developed the counter to that called learned industriousness. And learned industriousness is when someone gets rewarded for the sensation of high effort. All of us get rewarded for working hard when the result happens. That's what they teach you in kindergarten. Work hard, and then you'll get the good grade, and you get the reward. Learned industriousness is when people learn that working hard itself is the reward. I don't know that I've heard of many people who knew that better than Liz. You think that you're busy? I think that I'm busy. How about being an awesome mom, daughter, fiance, friend, boss, community servant, mentor, run 2 businesses, and also deal with an incredibly painful autoimmune disorder that required chemo? Liz was amazing. Amazing. Many of us, when we get a little bit sick, have a little owie, our mood changes. To have someone who lived in grace and love in spite of dealing with chronic pain is inspiring. We need to learn to be industrious. The next one is breadcrumbs, not sermons. As many of you know, Liz struggled with addiction and had overcome it, but was never far from it. I think that's best illustrated by the fact that she would offer the numbers for rehab centers and convenience store bathrooms. What a beautiful picture of meeting people where they're at. Not with a sermon or a stick, but just with an opportunity for help where they would need it and respond to it. Leave breadcrumbs. No. The last thing that I've come to appreciate and love about Liz is to be contagious. In church circles, we talk about this as being a disciple who makes disciples. It's weird Christianese language. But what that means is to be a follower of Jesus, who is following Jesus so closely that other people join you in following Jesus. There's a story that I heard actually about Patrick that I think illustrates this so well. Evidently, one day a young man came up to their house, and Patty answered the door, and he said, "Hi." Patty said, "Hello." "Patrick told me I could get some shoes here." And I can only imagine the look on Patty's face as she looked down and saw, yes, indeed, there was a young man at her doorstep with no shoes. But Patrick had sent him there to get them. So Patty went and got him some shoes. And I know that story isn't directly about Liz, but I think it is. That is the kind of life that she lived, that who she was rubbed off on the people around her. And I think that is what we have to do here. That's why this slide shows the transition. There's some huge questions about COVID and the universe and God and life and death that undoubtedly you're asking. But the next piece of this, mourn with those who mourn and rejoice with those who rejoice. The next piece is to move toward what do we do now? How can we honor Liz today, tomorrow, and forever in who she was? Be resilient. Speak the truth in love. I can't believe I forgot. How did I forget that? The number one thing that I wanted to remember for myself. This is incredible. Liz didn't gossip. I heard that from several people. Liz did not gossip. In a world where gossip and status online and behind people's back is rampant, what an example for my life and yours. What an example for my life and yours. Be resilient, speak the truth in love, no gossip. Learn to be industrious. Leave breadcrumbs, not sermons. And be contagious. Now we're going to welcome some people who knew Liz very intimately, and they're going to share their reflections and thoughts on their relationship with her. First is her aunt, Natalie Larson.
I guess I'm okay. I'm good by myself. Hello, my name is Natalie Larson, and I'm Liz's cousin. Elizabeth was an amazing mother, a wonderful community member, and loyal cousin. Her love for Eden was evident by the effort she put into making sure she had everything she needed for life, for gymnastics, for cheerleading, or for an adventure. Liz was always generously including Eden's friends in activities, whether it was zip lining, going to an escape room, triple play, or going to roller skating. Not only was she always up for an outing, but she loved reading and sharing stories with Eden, too. They loved making and elaborately decorating cookies for the holidays and spending time together. Community was important to Liz also. She shopped locally and often organized events downtown, like an Easter egg hunt or having soup at the tree lighting ceremony in Sandpoint. More than once, I asked for donations for school fundraisers, and the answer was always a resounding yes. One day I was filling in at Azalea, and a man came in for a donation for a relay race for the deaf. I asked Liz just to double check, and she said, oh yes, I always donate money to him. She was selfless and put a lot of effort into making Sandpoint a better place to live. Liz was a gift to have as a cousin because she was always positive and a great example of toughness and resilience for our family. I am thankful for all the times we spent together. Everything from catching sunfish with corn at Sasheen Lake to driving to Seattle to check out an art college, visiting while waiting for our kids at gymnastics, or running into each other at local thrift stores and just catching up. In conclusion, I'd like to share a short story that demonstrates Liz's kindness and generosity. One day late last fall, I was shopping at Finn and McDonald and ran into Liz and Eden. I had tried on a fleece pullover, but decided not to buy it. I wasn't really shopping for me. We visited a little while and then went our separate ways. Christmas came and my family was sick and we couldn't leave our house. On Christmas Day, Liz and Eden came out to our house and left presents for us on our porch. In mine was the fleece pullover from Finn and McDonald that I had eyed and some beautifully decorated sugar cookies that her and Eden had made together. And Liz never complained about her sores or her illness or anything. She just always chose to let her light shine. The world lost her too early, but in her short time here, she showed us, all of us, how to be brave, strong, live fiercely, and love unconditionally. On behalf of her parents, her brother Patrick, her daughter Eden, and her fiancé Nick, and the rest of her family, we would like to thank everyone for coming today and for all of the support over the past week. The cards, the flowers, the food, and the love. To finish off, I would like to state the first couple lines of the Serenity Prayer. I've been reciting it to myself this week a lot, and I think it's something that we can all take with us into our life. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. We love you, Liz.
What a beautiful picture of who Liz was. It's embarrassing for me that I messed up her relationship because Natalie is actually my closest connection to Liz. So, sorry about that, cousin. There's also a beautiful story, I was thinking about Natalie, a beautiful story I heard about a time in Liz's life when she moved in with Natalie for a time, in a difficult time. And it was when Hattie, Liz's daughter, was just a baby. And Liz told Patty that Hattie saved her life because at that moment she was able to get up and rock Hattie. And I think that is the picture of a start of Liz moving towards grace and how she went from someone who was wounded and broken to someone who could raise Eden the way she did. And what an amazing picture of how Liz can transform our lives today, tomorrow, and forever through her memory. Next is some more of Liz's friends. I think Sherry Meekings is next. And I think they were all going to come up together before, so maybe they will now. Okay, they're going to now.
So with Liz's friendship to all of us comes so much love. So Scotty did such a wonderful job up here. We kind of had an order, and just life happens. So I think we're just going to wing this. So, I think
my name is Misty Render, and before I met Liz, I had an alcoholic, wasted life. I've been in and out of ICU units from alcohol poisoning, and one time with an Ativan mixed in. So Liz literally saved my life. I met Liz in December 2017. I had just got my third DUI with a felony charge, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The court forced me to do community service, which I chose Creations. After some time, Liz offered to sponsor me and invited me to a Celebrate Recovery group with all these women and some more. I hated being there, and they all could definitely see that. But they still embraced me, and they showed me love, and they gave me the support I needed and never had before, and they became my family. Liz opened a new chapter in my life that put me on the path that started a wonderful sober journey. Liz showed me love, but put up boundaries that challenged me, which really frustrated me at first, but also made me think in a different way, and I became stronger. I was with Creations for 2 years when I became a part of the community. I started teaching a wonderful group of special needs, children and adults, and that fed my soul, and I finally felt like I had a purpose in my life. This chapter in my life has ended, and I'll begin a new chapter without her, but I will stay on the same path, and I will not let her down.
Liz was an open book from the very first day. She was very transparent. She was quick to make a friend, and as a friend, she shared laughter, listening, and always a helper's heart. She did productive things for her community. As Natalie mentioned, things like the Easter egg hunt, Christmas tree lighting, and downtown parades. She worked late nights making spaces for others better, like Creations nonprofit Children's Art and Science Center. She was business-minded and started Creations Closets in the Cedar Street Bridge, as many of you know. She was a giver with a generous heart, always chipping in when she could, remembering a birthday or just buying you a coffee. She manifested her dream when she took ownership of Azaleas, a small business downtown, which she poured herself into. She cultivated a beautiful work environment, which was enjoyed by all, and all enjoyed being a part of. Most of all, Liz was the most amazing mom to her beautiful daughter, Eden. And there was no question about the abundant love and pure joy she had for her beautiful, beautiful girl. She spent a large portion of her time doing everything and anything for Eden. She took her to gymnastics, skiing, cheerleading, trampoline parks, epic trips, steak dinners with always dessert to go. That was just to name a few. Eden, you should know that your mom would go to the ends of the earth for you. Eden, you were the most treasured accomplishment in her life. I'm devastated that we lost her so soon, but we will carry on her light and her love as a whole, as a group of us. That's our commitment. I'm forever blessed to call her my friend.
Oh boy.
Excuse me. When Sherry asked me to speak today, reflecting and celebrating the life of our dear friend Liz, I felt inspired to share how her legacy impacted the lives of our quirky Cedar Street Bridge family. While the grief of her passing is fresh and raw, we can sense her love and hear her giggle, already an angel in our midst. We have been honored and blessed to know Liz for the past 10 years. She arrived in Sherry's life as a young mother on a journey of self-awareness and recovery. At first, Liz was quiet and observing, taking in a new community of dreamers and creatives. While Sherry was naturally a mentor for Liz, it was not long before Liz revealed a wealth of her own ideas and the ability to execute the most unlikely of tasks. Liz became instrumental to the foundation and growth of Creations, to the gym that it is today. She was a teacher to all of us. Her endless skills and determination through all obstacles was remarkable. Her playful spirit and zest for life brought joy and happiness to children and families near and far who had the pleasure of meeting her at Creations. Her eye for beauty and heart spilled over into Carousel, and she influenced another successful local business. She was incredibly clear and decisive under pressure. Where many people are creative or practical, Liz could be both. She encouraged people to follow their dreams, to take risks when necessary, and lured us back to reality when needed. Liz was a woman of strong opinions and always had suggestions or contributions to offer any given situation. Liz's enthusiasm for all things glitter and fun was infectious. She inspired us every day as a mother, friend, coworker, and visionary. Eden, you have a tribe that is here for you, always, with great respect of the fierce bond that you shared with your mama. We will celebrate her life with joy as we hold her in our hearts, and the memories of Liz push us to be the best of ourselves. I trust that she will continue to guide us when Sherry and I are overwhelmed and full of ideas. And we say, what would Liz do?
Yes, it is true. Liz and I spent 10 years experiencing all kinds of things. Sweat, tears, joy, laughter. We did the hard, the difficult, and we also did the amazing. My relationship with Liz started out as a teacher, and somewhere along the way, I became her student. She showed me through her resilience and her strive for excellence to not only survive in this wild ride we call life, but to thrive in it. Liz was like no other. Her sparkle will forever be in my heart and a sister spirit in my soul. My dear friend Rebecca, she suggested that we reach out to close friends and family and ask them to share words and thoughts that come to mind when they think of Liz. And Scotty did such a wonderful job. But I have some to add because we have we spent so much time with her and loved her so much. Here's some more. So, resilient, poised, and grateful. She loved babies and sewing, cupcakes and kitties. She was an amazing mama to her beautiful daughter, Eden. She loved parties and events. She was so generous. She was so giggly, and she was so silly. She was a little bit of leather and a little bit of lace. She strived for excellence in all areas of life. She was a role model and a mentor. She had great integrity. She was kind-hearted, warm and gentle. She was good-natured, thoughtful and compassionate. She loved our community so much. She loved water, fashion, and she loved other people's talents. She always did the right thing when no one was looking. She was optimistic. She never showed how much pain she was in. She was always polite, no matter what she felt inside. She was very, very creative. She was tenacious and confident, inspiring, grounded, and logical. She took the negative and she spun it into something positive. She was transparent, and she was intelligent, talented, aware, and insightful. This is our girl. She will be deeply missed by all of us. And I know if she could say something today, it would sound something like this. She would want us to always remember to try our best and to always be kind and uplifting to others. That was her code, and it will forever be my code. She grew me as a person. She grew my heart. She made me a better person, and I will deeply miss her. And today I just ask that may you leave here in peace and comfort, knowing that today's celebration of life for our Liz is not goodbye at all. It's just until we see her again. Junior, are you here? Yeah. Would you like to come up? Okay.
Well, that's hard to follow up. Like many of these ladies, I knew Liz from the Bridge. I've known her since around 2013. I joined the Bridge in 2014, and we became a large family. We all had children, and they became the Bridge kids, as we still call them to this day, although most of them are almost teenagers or are teenagers now. Became a tight-knit family. We shared meals and troubles and laughters and everything together. I've been asked to do a little bit of reflection and closing prayer on my thoughts of Liz. Liz was tough as nails. She was one that understood what it's like to have an autoimmune disease and to be taken off your feet at times. She would come up with little things for my kids, or when my feet were bad, she came up one time with a pair of Uggs that were in a size 14, which are almost impossible to find. She was just very thoughtful of other people's needs and always thinking about other people above herself. She'd walk by my shop every day, whether it's the restaurant or my other store, and she, even though you could see the pain in her face, she never let it get to her. She always had a smile. She always would ask how you were doing. You know, she'd always ignore her own pain and ask how you were or your family, and just, like I said, always had that infectious smile. She's such a great person. When I was asked to help with their service, I, of course, looked at different scripture and song that could best suit Liz. So I did come up with a few prayers. Some of you may know I'm an ordained minister. I do weddings usually. I've been asked to do a few celebrations of life, and that's not usually my forte. So I have come up with a couple prayers. If you guys would like to bow your heads with me, I'd like to lead us in these. Oh God, the life of Liz was a source of pleasure and enjoyment for our hearts and lives. As we celebrate her life today, we are blessed and comforted by your presence. Our hearts sing your praise for the impact of Liz and all who are here. Strengthen, encourage us through the difficult moments and grief, and our lips shall forever praise you. Dear Lord, as we journey together, celebrating the life of Liz, may we be reminded that you hold days in your hands. You know and understand the moments of our lives, the times we are born, the times we die, the times to plant and the times to uproot. We rejoice that there is meaning and purpose in our lives and in our relationship with you. Strengthen and comfort us today. Let your light continue to shine upon our lives and our path. Amen. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks, Junior, Sherry, Misty. One of the biggest questions I had when I met with the family this week is how did Liz do it? How did she become who she was? And I want to share one more story that I think gives us a window into how Liz did that and where we go from here. It involves Sherry. And Sherry, you can correct me if I get this wrong. It was immediately after Liz had begun her journey to being clean, and she was working at Creations. And I think it was her first day. And this is someone who was just coming from addiction, who had literally stole from family to feed her habit. And she met Sherry, just met her that day, first day working at Creations. And Sherry leaves, goes somewhere, doesn't tell Liz where, with the till open. All the cash, all that access to what had been feeding Liz's life. Fresh off the addiction, now she has access to, this is what I could use to go back to what I was doing. And Patty told me that Liz called her and said, Mom, this lady's crazy. This lady just left me with all this money. Doesn't she know why I'm here? This lady's crazy. And Patty, in typical mom fashion, says, so what are you going to do? Letting Liz make the choice. And it's very obvious from today that you don't need me to tell you what choice she made. She chose goodness and truth and beauty and grace. And I think everything that you've heard from people today is the capstone of what today is all about. That there were influences and stories and situations that shaped Liz, which allowed her to shape our lives. And so just like that story about Sherry or Patrick aren't exactly about Liz, they are. They're about how she became who she was and what she did in us, and now what she can do through us as we live in the grace that she so well showed. I'm going to close with not my words, but Liz's. This is a mother's mantra. And what was told to me is this is what Liz wrote for Eden, who you've heard so much about, and they recited together daily. A mother's mantra. You can be anyone you want to be. You can reach any goal you want to, because you are intelligent and competent. And if they knock you down, get up. Because God is with you and he has blessed you. If anyone knocks you down, you can and will get up over and over again. No one is better than you, and you are better than no one. One more time. You can be anyone you want to be. You can reach any goal you want to, because you are intelligent and competent. If they knock you down, get up. Because God is with you, and he has blessed you. And I'm sorry to do this, but just think for a second about what you've heard about Liz's life and what she went through, and that she wrote that. Because God is with you, and he has blessed you. And if anyone knocks you down, you can and will get up over and over again. Because no one is better than you, and you are not better than anyone. Let us all seek to live lives that honor who Liz was. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, We just thank you for who you are and the work you did in Liz's life and how that was passed on to us. We just pray that we would honor her and honor you in all that we think, say, and do. Let this time of grief and mourning draw us to what is beautiful, true, and good. Justice, mercy, peace. Lord, we thank you for Liz. We celebrate her life, and we ask that you would allow us to continue our relationship with her as we continue our relationship with you, moving to the reality of the way of Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen. The family would like to invite you all to Aunt Marilyn's house, right? Oh, okay. Not Cousin Natalie, Aunt Marilyn's house, which is 511 Huron Street, right? 511 Huron Street. There's going to be cake because, in the words of Liz, once again, life's short, you should eat dessert first. So there will be cake, 511 Huron Street. Thank you for coming.